On a certain night, while wandering around the abandoned temple, a beautiful mind felt a very good smell, which made her mouth water, and that smell seemed to be from an immortal body. So unable to resist her instincts, she ran towards where the delicious smell was coming from, as she couldn't miss the opportunity to devour the immortal body, which is extremely rare to find, in order to ascend to immortality. And as she went towards the temple, cuts to another scene, and shows the protagonist of this work, one of the many lucky ones who go to the Insekais, but unlike the others who easily become invincible, like the Rimuru, he reincarnated in the world of the immortals. But his meridians were blocked and he couldn't cultivate, and even then his master said that he was not useless, since he had the legendary immortal body, so if he persisted, he could immediately evolve to the immortal realm. But for Proto, worse than not being able to cultivate, it was the fact that God had reincarnated him in this Insekai with a body that attracts monsters, and because of his bad attribute, he was hunted and injured many times by demons, and because of him the sect he lived to was attacked, so the elder had no choice but to take him to a secluded place, and this is his story in an Insekai, a sheep in a pack of wolves, waiting to be devoured. Totally different from the other Insekai man who won several hacks and lived surrounded by girls, so irritated he cursed the god who brought him to this world, and before he finished his curse, lightning fell beside him, and seeing that he ended up getting his underwear dirty, and told the god that everything that he said was a piegadinha. So after that scare, he lay down to sleep with the hope that when he wakes up the old man will have come to visit him with a roasted chicken, but before falling asleep, a female voice whispered in his ear that on a spring night like this one, it would be nice if he spent the night with her. But unlike my subscribers who would be euphoric in this situation, the guy got scared and ended up messing his underwear even more. Of course, if you're almost asleep, then out of nowhere someone comes whispering in your ear, and it's natural for you to be startled. But the thing she does next makes you forgive her, as all of a sudden she smacked him with a big kiss, and said that the taste of an immortal body is delicious. But how does the Proto believed he was unlucky? He didn't take advantage of his great luck, and pushed her away, but she didn't get irritated, and asked if he doesn't like her great Sugdekai, and that pose of hers was a low blow, which did the trick. Proto ended up letting her guard down, and she didn't lose this chance to dominate him even more, and realizing that he would have his first time stolen, he asked if she was human, or a monster. At the same time all that spicy mood disappeared, and in its place a dark mood appeared, and answering his question, she said that it is a monster. Of course the Proto already expected this, but even so, it was a shock for him, since his master said that he had placed a ban on this temple, which prohibited demons from entering it, and while cursing his master, the monster girl gave his shoulder a nice bite, and realizing he was dying again, he felt frustrated to spend his new life hiding. Of course, like every Insekai man at the time of his death, the Proto awakened the system, and in this the system explained that the Invincible domain was unlocked, and in a round area with a diameter of 2 meters around him, he will become the king and will be invincible in his own territory, and with this hack that I just in order to win, he decided to fight back, and also test how strong the invincible territory was. But even seeing him all confident, the demon girl wasn't worried, since an ordinary person like him couldn't do anything against her, so she said that it would be better for him to let her devour him, and ignoring her, the Proto called the demon to his hand, and no matter what the demon's gender, he did just like Luffy, and punched her in the face, Saitama style, and disintegrated the monster and also crossed the sky, and having obliterated a level 3 sky realm ghost, it gained territory value points. At the same time the system explained that every 100 points gained, the wielder's invincible domain can be increased by 1 meter. Upon hearing this, the Proto decided to cover the entire continent with his domain to rule the world and create a great harem. And because he had used a lot of power and also because he was starving, he ended up fainting, guys. Because of that punch from the Proto that broke the bones heavens, an immortal treasure descended to the nether world, so it goes back a few seconds ago, and shows the sacred immortal sword fleeing from the upper world, and because it failed to capture the sword, an immortal being summoned the 12 immortals, and said that after the attack from an unknown enemy, the immortal sword that was in the Molten Blade Tower over 10,000 years ago, which was used by your father on the day he sacrificed himself to protect the upper realm, was stolen by an unknown being, so he ordered all 12 immortals to retrieve the holy sword, and those who covet the sword must be killed without mercy. At the same time the scene switches back to the Prota, and shows him trying to deal with his hunger, and also testing his invincible territory to see if he can move with his domain expansion, since if he could do that, he would be invincible. But when he put his hand outside the golden sphere, he realized that he couldn't move with his territory IO, and also that outside of his domain he felt very weak. So after this little test, he decided to get some food and find a way to gain more domain points. And while he was thinking about it, out of nowhere a girl flew towards him, and the one who had thrown this girl into his temple was the great elder of the evil dragon's cave. And as he listened to the two arguing, the Prota thought of not disturbing their battle, but when he realized that these people could have something to eat, he became glad not to starve to death, and walked into the middle of the mess. And seeing a mortal in such a place, the girl was worried about him ending up hurting himself. But then out of nowhere, when he said that this temple is the territory of a king, and he being that king doesn't allow invaders to enter his territory. So if he doesn't want to suffer the consequences for invading a king's territory, they should hand over what they brought of food. As compensation, the girl thought he was some kind from otaku are secluded, and unlike her, the leader of the bandits was irritated by his idiocy, and attacked the Prota with his skill of evil skulls. But the power of the extra could not cross his domain, and seeing that both the girl and the leader of the bandits realized that he was not just a mortal, because of that he attacked the Prota with his strongest skill. And seeing the extra entering his invincible domain, the great king became relaxed, since now the extra's life and death was at stake. In his hand, just to show off a bit, the Prota held the extra's sword with 2 fingers, and with that both the girl and the bandit leader were shocked since this was a spiritual weapon, and to make them even more shocked, the Prota broke the spirit weapon with his fingers, and threw one of the pieces at the extra's head, and for having killed the cultivator in the 3rd layer of the golden core, he gained 500 territory points. And with that, he realized that one of the ways of gaining territory points was killing cultivators. At the same time he used his 500 domain points to expand his invincible territory by 5 meters, and while he celebrated for increasing his domain, the girl started to think that the Prota was an expert who was hiding his power, and living in an abandoned mountain temple, and since he wasn't an idiot, before disposing of the corpse, he took the extra storage ring. But since he didn't have a cultivation base, he still couldn't use the ring, and while thinking of a way to resolve this, out of nowhere the girl started to give a great explanation of why she is in his territory, even though he didn't ask anything. At the same time she started to make several theories in her head over the Prota is in the domain of the nascent soul, and this is a level that no one from the netherworld has reached in the last 100 years, and seeing how submissive she was, the Prota decided to use her to open the weapon ring Z Nation. Of course the first thing he got inside the ring was something to eat, and being happy with his first meal after quite a while, he explained that his invincible domain is almost covering the entire temple, and his next step is to win enough dominion points to cover the whole world, and in the future to unify all worlds, and as a gift to have 10 or 8 wives. And while he was thinking about his glorious future, the girl knelt down and thanked him for saving her life, and also asked him in a cute way to accept her as his disciple, and if he accepts, she will do anything he wants. And because she was being so clingy, the Prota pushed her away, since he didn't want a disciple, and the reason he didn't want a female disciple was that he didn't have anything to teach her. But since he couldn't leave his territory to get food, he decided to have someone close by to bring him things to eat and drink until he enlarged his territory. Why? Because of this he accepted the girl as his disciple, while pretending to be an old master who came out of the immortal world over 10,000 years ago. And having become the Prota's disciple, the girl was very happy that she had met a very strong master. At the same time the system popped up saying that the host and the girl called Ling Bao formed a master-disciple relationship. And with that he gained 100 mastery points, and while he was happy that he gained more points, the mine destroyed his happiness by saying he stinks. After dark, the Prota decided to bathe using rainwater, as that was the safest way for him. But when the Ling Bao went to prepare his bath, she ended up seeing a wild animal, so without thinking twice times, she ran to warn the Prota that there was a demonic tiger in the golden core hiding in the bush. Of course, upon hearing this, the Prota got very excited, as he would gain more mastery points. At the same time, he showed the beast, saying that was attracted by a wonderful fragrance. But when he got close to the fragrance, he saw that young man annihilate a demon with a single punch and then eliminate a person, so now he is scared to death. The only thing he wants is to escape from this place. But as the fragrance was wonderful, his instincts were not letting him get away, and to lure the tiger towards him, the Prota put his arm out of the invincible domain. Since by doing so the fragrance of his immortal body would be stronger, and how his scent had gotten stronger, the tiger lost control and attacked the Prota, and as he saw the beast heading towards him, he explained that the reason the girl didn't smell the fragrance of his immortal body, and why the cultivators didn't, it has a sharp nose like monsters, and to disguise its smell as much as possible, he had decided to turn his smudge and never take a bath again. But upon gaining an invincible hack, he discarded this idea. At the same time, while drooling, the beast jumped towards the Prota, but she was stopped by his dominance, and mocking the poor feline, he ordered his disciple to kill the beast, and following his order, she summoned her sword and attacked the monster. But in that her sword ended up cracking, and to teach his disciple how to do it, the Prota took her sword, and with a simple swing, he cut the tiger in half, and gained 800 mastery points, and while the girl was even more admired by him, the great king asked to she cut the tiger's meat for him as eat later. Then the Prota used 800 points to update the system, and after it was updated, the system released a very appealing new function, and this function allowed the Prota to illuminate the vitality of all living beings. Moreover, he could also control everything in the invincible domain, and to test whether his new power was really powerful, he took a simple grass and turned it into a spirit herb. Of course, this was still just the beginning, because right after that, he made the grass turn into a spirit of nature, and seeing this, his disciple was shocked, and upon receiving an elixir containing the essence of life, which her master had just created in front of her, her admiration for him increased even more, and reached the level of worship. At the same time, the Prota named the spirit of Shaoban grass. Later, when she swallowed the elixir in order to raise her cultivation level, the system appeared saying that as the Ling raised her power level, he was rewarded with 50 points of domain value, and the explanation about this was that how he is the girl are linked as master and disciple. Each time she crosses a realm, she will provide the host with a portion of the reward in domain value. In short, the stronger she gets, the more territory points he will receive, so if he accepts more disciples and help them improve their cultivation, he could easily expand his territory all over the world, and after being satisfied with the first skill, he decided to try the second one. But when he went to do that, suddenly a sword fell in front of him. Guys, this is the divine treasure that fled from the upper realm in the previous part, and seeing the rusty sword, the girl realized that it was an immortal treasure. So she explains to her master that in the night before a powerful expert made a big hole in the sky with just one blow, and when his father went to check it out, he said that an immortal sword had fallen from the upper realm, and now all the lower realm experts are looking for the immortal sword, and even listening to her explanation, the Prota didn't take it seriously, as the sword in front of him looked like a scrap that was taken from the junkyard. But even if it wasn't an immortal treasure, he was confident in repairing it using his new skill. So after using his ability restoration power of all living beings, the rusty sword turned into a beautiful immortal treasure filled with power. But even so, for him this sword was useless, since if he wanted to, he could break it. She easily. Because of that, he gave the immortal treasure to his disciple. But when she held the sword, the frightening aura of a legendary dragon tried to swallow her will. But as she was in the territory of the invincible king, she managed to resist the aura of the sword, and decided to quickly evolve to be able to stand by her master's side. And while she fantasized about her future with her beloved master, she saw him using his power to repair and rebuild the entire temple. But to ruin his good mood, out of nowhere the roof of the temple was destroyed again. And who was to blame this time was the Lord of the Dragon's Cave, the head of the extra who was behind the girl. And making his mood even worse, 2 more extras broke the roof. Bro, the people of that guild don't seem to know how to use the door, and seeing them the girl was scared to death, since she thought they came for revenge. But in fact they were after the immortal treasure, and as the Prota's territory was a place rich in spiritual energy, it was easy for them to come to the conclusion that the immortal treasure was in the temple. Because of that, an old man trying to get an eel girl also appeared for the little party, and this old man was the patriarch of the Ghostbone sect. Of course, he was also thinking that the reason the temple had such a majestic aura was because of the immortal treasure. And upon seeing the Shao Ban on the shoulder of the Prota, the patriarch of the evil sect, he was excited as he saw it find a spirit transformation herb in such a place, and declared that everything in that precious place will be his. Upon hearing this, the leader of the dragon's cave got angry and attacked the old man. But the eel girl managed to defend herself easily, so they started a battle to see who would take everything. Of course, the patience of the Prota had already passed the limit, to see these two shitty old men fighting for their land and their treasures, while destroying their temple and pretending that it did not exist. And to make matters worse, when the head of the dragon's cave heard the Invincible King say that this temple was his, he started to destroy even more, and said that he was the owner of this place, so if he wants, he can destroy the entire temple. And seeing the attitude of the old men who didn't take him seriously, the Prota got pissed and decided to use them to gain more domain value. Even the girl who was scared to death a few seconds ago got annoyed with their attitude, and said that her master is so strong that he killed the dragon's cave leader's companion easily. Of course, the Prota didn't stop her. Instead, he added more fuel to the fire, saying that bald man was killed by him in just 2 seconds, and how the Prota looked immortal in his vision. The head of the bald ones didn't believe him, but even though he didn't, he got pissed, and said that he had already killed tens of thousands of mortals, and he personally refined the souls of all of them in that seal. And when he was past attacking the Invincible King, the old man took advantage of the fact that the chief of thieves had lowered his guard, and attacked him. And while the Prota made the expression of Satima, his disciple was extremely irritated with the way they were treating him, and said that and last night, when she was looking for the immortal treasure with her friends, this trash sent her subordinate to them. And in that all her sect friends were killed, and to make matters worse, now he has to listen to this and say blasphemy to his helpless master. But if she was stronger, she would cut his head off for blasphemy against his master. And irritated with the way she was referring to him, the boss of the dragon's cave attacked her. But as they were in the Invincible King's territory, everything was under the Prota's control, including their cultivation. So to show who was in charge, he made the 3 intruders from the dragon's cave return to the lowest level of cultivation, and ending up to do so, he told his disciple that since she couldn't defeat someone at the golden core stage, he suppressed their cultivation to the lowest level, so that she could have her revenge and kill them all. And seeing something unrealistic about her happening in front of him, the old man was shocked, as he had just seen a mere mortal directly cut a large guild master's cultivation. So the only conclusion he could come to in order to accept what was happening was that that mortal was actually a nascent soul realm expert. Of course, he wasn't the only one who came to that conclusion, the boss of the cave as well. And given the chance to take revenge with her own hands, the girl got excited, and attacked the barbarian using the holy sword, and seeing her going towards him, he mocked her, saying that not even her father could kill him, so it's impossible for her to do that even though he suppressed cultivation, and all confident, he used his 4th-rank gold-scaled treasure to attack her. But that confidence cost him his life. Since the girl was using the holy sword, so with just one swing from him, the only thing left of the extra was his boots, and seeing this terrifying power, the old man realized that the sword was the immortal treasure they were after, so he decided to kill the girl while she was with him, his guard down, and then immediately pick up the immortal sword. But when he went to do that, he felt the gaze of the Invincible King, and in that he noticed that if he had made a move, he would have met the boss of the dragon's cave. Because of that, he decided to retreat, and informed the Great Elder about the immortal treasure. Of course that wouldn't be easy, as the girl had gone mad due to the great power in his hand, and ran after them, and with 2 simple blows from him, she killed 2 more golden core cultivators, and in that the Prota ended up gaining a lot of domain points. So the Invincible King used the points he just gained to increase his territory to 22 meters. At the same time, his disciple asked in a cute way if she could eliminate all the members of the Ghost Bone sect, as they were an evil sect that turned the living into ghost slaves. And hearing the girl's terrifying request, the old man knelt down and said that her sect was not evil, and he also began to apologize for having destroyed the roof of the temple. It was not just him, all the members of his sect present in that place also knelt down and begged the Invincible King to spare their lives. Of course the Prota and he didn't fall for their little theatrics, and realizing that the old man had to use his ace up his sleeve, and ordered all his companions to attack the Prota at the same time. So while the Invincible King defeated the extras, the old man took this chance to flee, but what he didn't know was that the Prota had let him escape, so he could bring more extras after the immortal treasure, and with that naturally the Prota will gain more domain points by defeating them. Afterwards, upon returning to the Ghostbone sect, the old man decided to meet with the Supreme Elder, but before doing so, one of his servants said that the ancestor who ignited immortality 5,000 years ago had appeared, and met with the Elder Supreme, and now the ancestor is waiting for him. And upon hearing this beautiful news, the old man was confident of his revenge, so in the ancestor's room, he met the ancestor, and was terrified of his aura, as he was superior at the nascent soul's cultivation level. At the same time, the immortal said that their mission is to find the divine sword before he descends to the lower realm. Upon hearing this, the old man revealed where the holy sword was. So the scene goes back to the Prota, and shows him explaining that when he first obtained the domain, he did not have control over his own territory, and his perception was common, but after the domain was updated, he obtained the ability to control everything within his territory, and his perception became sharper. But the problem was that he was weak outside his own domain. Because of that, he decided to use the skill that gave birth to a spiritual intelligence to increase the cultivation of his disciple. Then, all excited, he said to his disciple that he had a way to increase her cultivation, but it would hurt to the point that she wants to die. But in the end she will feel like she is in heaven. Hearing this, for some reason, she came to the conclusion that he was wanting to do double cultivation with her, and all embarrassed, she said that this is her first time, because of that she is afraid. And seeing her disciple acting strangely, the Prota said that he wants to be her first time, since that would be more effective. And even though she was even more embarrassed, she plucked up courage, and agreed to do double cultivation. But unlike what she expected, the Prot just placed his hand on her head, and sent his energy into her body, and feeling his majestic energy, the girl at first felt very good, but when the Prota saw that her cultivation was increasing very slowly, he transferred a much higher level of energy to her, and in that the girl started to feel a lot of pain, as if her body was about to explode due to the great amount of energy. But we will only know if he will explode or if he will manage to increase his strength to unimaginable levels in the next part. In the previous part, Prota was reincarnated, and at his death, he awakened the Invincible King, and with his new ability, he gained a beautiful disciple, and transferred a part of his infinite energy to her, and at that the girl started to feel a lot of pain, as if her body was about to explode due to the great amount of energy. But since the Prota couldn't stop now, he told his disciple to hold on until her cultivation leveled up, and if she couldn't, she would surely die. And the moment she heard that, her life started flashing before her eyes. But since she still hadn't become strong, and also hadn't inherited the Nine-Sword sect, she didn't accept it. To die like this, she wants to be able to fight at her master's side, and travel the whole world by her side, and because of her strong willpower, and also because she is being protected by her master's territory, the girl managed to cross his cultivation to the next level, and because his disciple had managed to do a great job, the Prota congratulated her. But suddenly the gods began to throw thunderbolts with a greater destructive power towards them, and because of the power of that lightning, the animals of the mountain near the temple fled terrified, and upon seeing this scene, the queen of monsters, Hong Hai, who was at the nascent soul stage, began to think that this great tribulation was happening, because of the immortal treasure that fell somewhere on this mountain last night, and the other monster kings were terrified of the tribulation power, since if they were hit, they would die instantly. And while they were afraid of the thunder, the Prota instructed his disciple, to absorb the tribulation power, and using the thunder as supplements, and seeing the power of the tribulation diminishing, the three kings were even more shocked. But when they realized that in the middle of all this was a young girl, they forgot their fears, and began to think that this mysterious being had the immortal treasure, so without being able to control their greed, they ran towards her. Right after the tribulation was dismissed, but when they got there, they were surprised to see that the culprit of all this was not a spiritual creature, and yes, an 18-year-old human girl, and because of the girl's high level of cultivation, the Queen of Monsters thought that the disciple of the Proto was a great talent of the human race, that when she grew up she would become an immortal, for because of that, she decided not to fight for the mystical treasure. Instead, she chose to take this mind with her. And as she said that, the young woman's level kept increasing. And she went from level 6 of Foundation Establishment to level 7, and as her disciple was getting stronger, the Proto was gaining territory points as a reward, and because she had a restrained spiritual breath, an immaculate body, and also because she had survived a tribulation, her talent reached a level that would be considered a talent blessed by the gods. And that made her even more valuable than an immortal treasure. So without wasting any time, the foxwoman tried to take the Ling with her. But the bull demon grabbed her leg, and said that he also prefers this girl over the immortal treasure. Even the king of snakes got into the mess, so they assumed their true forms. But when the fight was about to start to see who would take the girl as a disciple, the bull said it would be better to ask the girl who she wants to be her master. Returning to the Proto, it shows his disciple regaining consciousness, and getting excited for having reached the 3rd level of the Golden Core phase, and in that the Invincible King congratulated her on her good work, since she managed to become a celestial talent shaped by hands of him. And the reason the girl was so excited was that her Golden Core cultivation was already at the level of a 9-sword sect elder. And to further increase her happiness, her master gave her 3 storage rings, and the reason he didn't have any was because someone had placed a curse on him that doesn't let his cultivation increase. But he wasn't worried about that, since if he stays in his invincible domain, he practically becomes a god, so his small goal right now is to expand the invincible dominion all over the mountain. And while he was creating plans for the future, 3 strange monsters appeared out of nowhere and started to show off, saying that they have items that would help the Ling girl to cross over to nascent soul cultivation, and there is also a fruit that will give eternal youth if she eats it. And seeing this strange scene, the Proto realized that this immortal fruit was what the old man said would change his physique by take it, and in that he could increase his cultivation level. So naturally he decided to have this fruit. Of course even his disciple was delighted with the idea of staying young forever, and unlike the bull and the snake, the fox woman said who has no gifts from the upper realm, but if the girl is willing to worship her as her master, she will take the young girl as her adopted daughter, and she will be respected as the young lady of her ancient fox celestial clan, and she will dedicate her clan's power to help her achieve immortality. Of course this was much greater than the snake and the bull could offer. Because of this the fox was confident of her victory, but to their surprise the girl turned down his offers, and said who has no reason to accept them as her teachers. She already has an excellent master, and next to him she will not only become an immortal, she will reach the level of a god. And irritated with her answer, the fox asked who would be this incredible master she was referring to. Upon hearing this, the Proto introduced himself saying that he is the master of the Ling. And because he could not find out his cultivation level, the Queen of Monsters thought that the Proto was just an ant without cultivation who was deceiving an innocent young girl. Because of this, the bull got angry and decided to test the Proto's skills. Naturally the girl was confident in her master's victory, and the Invincible King is also confident in his power, since in his territory, he was practically a god, so he called the King of Monsters by X1, and seeing the bull attacking the crook, the fox felt frustrated that he could not display his skills to his disciple, and while they thought that the mortal would die easily, they saw a surreal scene, where even the bull using all his power, he could not make any scratch on the swindler, and using only the middle finger, the Proto easily defeated the bull. And when witnessing such a scene, the fox finally realized that the invincible king was much stronger than them, and acting in an arrogant manner. The Prota asked if they still believe that they are more qualified than him to be his disciple's master. Of course, after witnessing a bit from his power, the monster kings became very obedient, and began to apologize for disturbing an elder like him. The snake demon even gave his immortal fruit to the Prota as an apology, and seeing how obedient they were, he decided to keep the 3 monster kings as his subordinates, since he was short of manpower. So after accepting the apology, he asked where the snake monster had found this fruit. And the king of monsters replied that this fruit was obtained by your divine ancestor 3,000 years ago in the ancient bronze mountain in the Forbidden Zone. But when the immortal tree was discovered, the immortals descended to the nether world and took it away. Therefore beyond that, there are no more fruits. Immortals in the nether world. And seeing how the Prota accepted his apology, the snake monster became more confident in its survival, as he even commented that his ancestor was at the god transformation cultivation level. Of course the Prota realized that the snake monster was quite intelligent, but that was profit for him, as an intelligent subordinate is always welcome. And noticing that his disciple was drooling while looking at the fruit, the Prota handed it over to her, and told her to eat and leave the pit of the fruit for him. And having received yet another great gift from her master, the girl's adoration towards the invincible king increased even more, and using his ocular ability, the Prota saw that when his disciple ate the immortal fruit, her ordinary body transformed into an immortal body. After receiving the seed, the Prota threw the seed on the ground, and seeing this, the monster kings realized that the elder was trying to cultivate the immortal tree in this temple. But for them this was impossible to happen, since the immortal tree cannot have cultivated in a random place in the nether world. But to their surprise, the moment the seed touched the ground, the immortal tree instantly grew. And for the Prota this was no big deal, since he planted beans in his territory to obtain beans, so by planting an immortal tree, he naturally obtained immortal fruits. And while the monster kings had an expression of disbelief, the Prota caused them to be terrified by saying that a single immortal fruit is not enough to compensate the crime of invading his territory. So full of fear they began to beg for forgiveness, and the Prota said that they had only 2 choices, submit to him, or die, and naturally they chose to submit, and become subordinates, and seeing them so submissive, the Prota said that from today they should call him master, but they don't need to worry, he will treat them well. So today he will give them a small present, and finishing saying that, the invincible king transferred some of his energy to the 3 monsters, and at that their cultivation started to increase. But this caused the heavens to rage since the Prota had just changed his disciple's fate, and now he was changing the fate of 3 monsters at once. So naturally the thunder tribulation this time was much stronger, but since they were in the Prota territory, the tribulation was contained, and the lightning power was refined to temper their bodies. So after spending time cultivating, they were able to increase their abilities, and also improve their talents from rank 6 to rank 8, and with that, they realized the greatness of their new master, and swore to serve him to death. At the same time the girl also tested her aptitude. Before she was level 4, but now she was ranked 9th, and the reason for this was that the Prota only used a little of all living things to promote King's monsters to 8th rank. In contrast, when he helped his disciple, he used as much power as he could, so that means his disciple maybe became an immortal, but not her abilities. Rather her body that became immortal, and calming his disciple's elation, the Prota said that the highest qualification in the nether world is the 9th rank, but above it there are still higher qualifications, and as the talent measuring stone lost its color soon after reaching the 9th rank, it means that your disciple's qualifications exceed 9th rank. And listening to your entire explanation, the 3 monsters started to think that the Prota came from the upper world, so if they stand by their master's side, they will definitely ascend for immortality. Because of this their worship towards the invincible king reached the maximum level, and wanting to please its master, the snake monster asked the Prota's permission to catch a fire chicken for the young lady who is now an immortal. At the same time the fox explained that the fire chicken contains a pinch of immortal beast blood in its body. The meat is delicious and is considered a delicacy on Earth, and it will be good for the young lady. And while drooling, the girl asked her master to let her go after the fire chicken, so she could test how strong she was. So upon receiving her master's permission, she went on a little adventure. Then while returning to the temple with the chickens of fire, the old man from the Phantom Bone sect suddenly appeared, and attacked her. Of course the reason they were after her is to get her hand on the holy sword, and while she was surprised, she realized that both the old man and the others three figure before they were in the nascent soul realm. So since she was in the third level of the Golden Core phase, it would be impossible for her to defeat all four even using the immortal sword. Because of that she tried to find a way to escape. But even trying to put fear in him, when using his master's name, it didn't work, as the old man was full of arrogance after reaching the nascent soul level. So confidently he said that when he kills her and receives the immortal sword, he will turn her into a ghost slave, and then he will do the same thing with her master. And finishing saying that, he attacked the mine, but the divine sword moved by itself, and made a magical barrier around the girl. And seeing at this, the old man was shocked, as he noticed that in a few days the girl had risen to the Golden Core stage. Because of that, all the members of the Phantom Bone sect decided to kill the girl quickly, as she was very talented and had grudge against his sect. But even attacking her again, the girl managed to defend herself using the immortal sword, and tried to escape before the magic power in her body ran out, and getting angry at having her attack parried, the old man flew towards her with blood in his eyes. Meanwhile, the fox woman and the other two monster kings were playing a game with the Prota. But after losing, the fox started cursing the bull demon for letting his master win. At the same time the Prota realized that his disciple was taking her time. But he was confident that she was safe. But unlike him, Mind Fox was finding it strange that the young lady's breath is getting weaker and weaker. Not only her, the other two monster kings noticed that the young miss was injured. But as their master was not worried, they thought he was training young miss. But they were wrong, as the Prota cannot know what happens outside his territory, so he didn't realize the chase that was going on in the mountain, nor when his disciple was almost arriving at the temple, and received a full attack from another member of the Ghost Bone sect. And seeing his attack hitting the girl in full, the ghost mind said that after receiving her palm attack, even if the girl doesn't die now, she won't live long. So she sent the old man to fetch the immortal treasure, and take the girl's soul to be refined and turned into a ghost slave. But before getting close to the holy sword, the immortal treasure flew away. But using all her speed, the ghost girl managed to capture the sword. And she was amazed at the majestic power of the immortal treasure. Meanwhile, the old man was happy to see the Prota's disciple in such a state, so without wasting any more time, he went towards her, and just as the old man went to deal the final blow to her, something he didn't expect happened. The Queen of Monsters appeared out of nowhere and saved the girl, and took the opportunity to hurt him. And seeing the state of the young lady, the queen was irritated by the insect's audacity, and asked if he wanted to die. It wasn't just her who was left with angry at seeing the state of the young lady. The other kings of monsters were also pissed, and regaining consciousness, the girl asked if the master had sent them, and Mind Fox replied that yes. At the same time a flashback happens, and it shows the monsters saying that the Mrs. Aura was getting weaker and weaker, so her master should stop this test, otherwise she would end up dying, but different from what they thought. The Prota didn't know that his disciple was in a critical situation, so the moment he found out about this, he sent the monster kings to go save her, since he couldn't let his disciple die, and all those who tried to harm his disciple must be eliminated. And receiving his master's order, they wasted no time and went to save the lady. Returning to the present, the girl explained to the fox mind that her enemies are part of the Ghost Bone sect, and they have 3 nascent souls. But as she was seriously injured, the fox queen asked her not to exert herself, otherwise the injuries could get worse, and to prevent that from happening, the queen used her monstrous power to protect her heart, and at the same moment she started using her power, the girl lost consciousness, and as her soul was stable, the Mind Fox decided to take the girl to her master as soon as possible, so that he could heal her. Naturally the Ghost Bone sect would not remain silent, and would let the girl survive. Because of that, in the first exchange of blows with the girl, the old man cast a spell that devoured the girl's soul, so if he doesn't undo the curse, she will die. But even saying that to put more fear in his enemies, the Snake King was not worried, and said that he knows that the curse, the one from the ghost sect, devours the soul, but there is a rumor that if you kill the one who cast the spell, the curse will naturally break, so they just need to eliminate the old man. And as 3 elders from the Phantom Bone sect were at his side, the Patriarch was quite confident of his victory. But it wasn't just the Phantom sect that was confident of winning, so following their master's order, the monsters assumed their true form and attacked their enemies. And seeing them heading towards them, the 3 elders used their magic to defend themselves. But as the brute strength of the bull was too high, one of the elders had to use all his power to defend himself, and in that their appearance ended up being revealed, and taking advantage of their defensiveness, the Snake King attacked them at the same time, and went towards the one who cast the spell against the lady. But before he managed to get close to the old man, the old woman who had her exposed appearance appeared in front of him, and said that if he wants to kill the Patriarch, he will have to go through her first. And while all this was happening, the Prota finally managed to feel the movements of his enemies. And in that he saw that the bull was fighting 2 elders at the same time, but even though he felt that, he still couldn't know anything about the outside world, and because he allowed his disciple to hunt the fire chicken, he started to feel guilty, and ended up remembering a trauma from his past, where he wasn't able to protect his beloved, and now he couldn't protect his disciple either, since she was out of invincible territory. So if there were invincible domain skills that made him cultivate, he might become powerful, and would have enough power to protect his disciple, and he wouldn't have to hide like a coward like he is doing now. Of course he knew that now was not the time to be blaming himself. He needs to do his best to save his disciple. Because of that he expanded his invincible domain. Meanwhile, the battle between the powers of 6 nascent soul cultivators was going on. And even though he was the Patriarch, the old man knew that his level 1 cultivation at the height of the Golden Core would not be enough to participate in this battle, so he just stood at a distance watching all this happen, and to his despair one of the elders ended up losing the immortal sword, but luckily the sword fell in front of him, and as he became quite excited, he remembered that his goal was just to bring the immortal treasure to the ancestor of the Ghostbone sect. And the moment he went to run away to complete his mission, he realized that even if he took the sword and ran away, it would be bad if the 3 elders were eliminated, as his sect would have no basis in the future, so instead of following the ancestors' orders, he decided to save the elders first, since as he was the sect's patriarch, its main mission was to take his sect forward, and in that the Prota noticed that the old man was acting strange, and while trying to understand what his plan was, the Invincible King ended up realizing that the old man was after his disciple. The plan of the Patriarch was to take advantage of the fact that the monsters weren't looking to capture the girl, and use her as a hostage to come out victorious in this battle. Of course, having realized the old man's plan, the Prota got pissed and went towards him, and in less 30 seconds later the Invincible King appeared next to his disciple, and seeing how pissed he was, the old man got scared. At the same time the legendary sword fled from his hand, and flew towards the Invincible King, and in that the sword became in a very cool magic glove. Naturally the Prota was surprised, since he didn't think that the mortal treasure would be able to read his mind, and transform into what he was thinking, and seeing that his enemy had managed to control the sword of his will, and even change his form, the old man decided to run away. Of course the Prota wasn't going to allow the Patriarch to escape after having injured his disciple. So full of hatred he punched his enemy, and in that the old man's body couldn't resist and it ended up exploding, so when saving the girl, he took her towards the temple, and to our surprise the old man had not died. He was shaped like dimples. Bro, this old man is worse than a cockroach. Taking advantage of the Invincible King not paying attention to him, the dimpled Paraguay started to run away. Of course he knew that there was no way the Invincible King could let his soul escape so easily, but no matter how much he thought, he couldn't understand why having survived, so putting that aside, he came up with a plan to become a resentful soul, since that was the only way for him to survive, and while thinking about it, He ended up smelling an immortal body coming from the Invincible King, but since people who have this mystic physique couldn't cultivate, he ruled out that this smell was because of the immortal body. But still he couldn't resist this smell, and decided to wait for a chance to steal the mystic physique for himself. After seeing his disciples' wounds, the Prota got pissed and decided to eliminate all those bastards who hurt her. But before that, he used his power to heal her, and due to the severity of the wound, she wouldn't be able to survive. If he had arrived a little later, then when the girl regained her consciousness, the first thing she did was apologize to her master for not being able to complete her mission. And while calming her down by saying that it was not her fault, he felt that the battle was coming to an end with the victory of his servants, and proving that his prediction was right. The ghost girl fell in front of him, and seeing her, the Prot looked into her eyes as if he wanted to break the cultivator in half, and noticing this look from him, she got irritated, since she thought he was a mere mortal. But before she attacked him, suddenly the Invincible King appeared in front of her, and slapped her in the face. For him it didn't matter who she was, a cultivator from the nascent soul or a supreme elder. He kept hitting her several times, and even though she got even more irritated, she couldn't do anything, and had her head smashed into the ground. And to make matters worse, the mortal even stepped on her head, and seeing this bizarre situation, the other elders were shocked, and their surprise increased to find out that the mortal was the master of the Monster Kings. So as her situation was not good, the other cultivator decided to run away since the patriarch had been killed, and his companion captured. But when she went to flee, the patriarch with the appearance of Dimples from Paraguay appeared, and asked her to save his soul, and seeing the pathetic state he was in, she thought of abandoning him. But hearing that an eternal body was hidden in the temple, she changed her mind, and decided to help the patriarch to get the immortal body. And realizing their intention, the Invincible King called them to fight, and to make things more interesting, he did the aroma of his immortal body overflowed at a much higher level, and sensing the aroma, the elders confirmed that it was indeed the immortal body. Even the Monster Kings started to nanny when they smelled it, and in that one of the elders couldn't resist, and attacked the Prot. But with just one hand he grabbed the extra's head, and smashed him to the ground, and with a demonic expression, he did like the Hulk, and started smashing the old man from side to side. And seeing so, the kings of monsters were scared by this scary way of fighting their master. Naturally the extra couldn't stand it, and ended up dying, and for having eliminated the elder, he gained 1,200 domain points, and being excited to gain more points, he was towards his prey, and feeling the delicious aroma diminish, the Snake King came to the conclusion that his master used an immortal treasure to affect everyone's mind, and took advantage of the ancient being out of control to eliminate him. And even by being tempted by the immortal body, the elder knows that this guy in front of her had higher cultivation than her. Because of that she managed to resist and didn't attack, and because she's in this kind of situation, she started to blame the patriarch for not revealing that there was such an expert in this place, and while trying to find the patriarch to vent her anger, she realized that that garbage had hidden. And even though she was irritated by the situation, she had no choice but to run away. Of course there was no way that he tried to let her get away, so using his invincible territory, he started to increase her cultivation. Naturally she couldn't understand what his intention was, by increasing her abilities, but in the next moment she couldn't think straight since she was feeling it. Something incredible that she has never felt in her entire life, and while she was in ecstasy, the tribulation appeared and was irritated by the fact that the Prota is trying to change the fate of yet another person, of course appearing. Her decision was part of the Invincible King's plan, and as he expected, lightning was shot at the crone, and just as he used his power to help his disciples absorb the tribulation, he helped the crone absorb the lightning to increase her strength, cultivation, and as she was filled with pleasure, she could only come to one conclusion, for the Prota is increasing her cultivation, and that was that he fell in love with her beauty. And seeing what was happening in front of him, the old man regretted that having become the enemy of the Invincible King, and the kings of monsters could not understand what their master's plan was. And as time passed, the old woman began to feel pain. She realized that her body was no longer supporting the level of energy that was being sent to her, and as her cultivation had increased to the god transformation level, the tribulation became even angrier, and shot out its lightning stronger, and unlike before, the Invincible King did not refine the re-lightning to increase her cultivation, instead he threw her towards the crew. And as she was not able to control her high energy level, she ended up exploding, and in that the Proto won 2,000 points for eliminating a god transformation cultivator. Simplifying it, he increased her cultivation to gain more territory points when he eliminated her, and seeing what just happened to her friend, the ghost girl went into despair, realizing that she would be next, and started screaming at him not to move. Approach her, and getting excited about this scene, the Proto said that she doesn't need to worry, he won't approach her, since he can use his power without needing to get close to her, and finishing saying that, he used his ability to increase the cultivator's cultivation, and even seeing a beautiful mind begging forgiveness, the Invincible King didn't care, and continued to increase her cultivation. But for some reason the tribulation didn't appear this time, so with no other option the Proto had to eliminate his enemy before he managed to make her rise to the god transformation level. Because of that he only gained 1,200 points, and seeing their enemies who had the cultivation level similar to theirs being defeated in such a short time, the kings of monsters were terrified with the power of their master. At the same time the system window appeared saying that a bug was identified. And soon then it was fixed. Because of that from now on, the host can still use thunder power to help people to farm in the future, but it can only be used once a month, and as the Proto had more than 5,000 points, he updated his invincible territory, and in that his domain reached 74 meters, so when the old man tried to escape from the mountain, the Proto noticed at the time, and told him to stop hiding, and realizing that it would be impossible to continue hiding. The sun flew towards him, and started begging not to be killed. Of course that only made the Proto get even more pissed off, so he started to treat the old man's soul as if it were a balloon, and even wanted to eliminate him, yet he decided to let his disciple decide what to do with him. At the same time the Invincible King asked the fox to go catch the chicken, for him to roast the chicken for his disciple when he woke up. In the previous part, the protagonist saved his disciple, and eliminated the cultivators of the Ghost Bones sect, and left the Dimples of Paraguay alive. At the same time the Invincible King asked the fox mind to go capture the fire chicken, for him to roast the chicken for his disciple when she wakes up. Afterwards they ended up fighting over who would get the best part of the roasted chicken. The Proto explained that his domain was now over 74 meters, but it was still too small to make the entire Immortal Mountain become his territory, so his main goal is to gain more domain value, to expand his invincible territory, and also improve his system, and the easiest way to gain mastery points at a very fast speed, and attract Overpower cultivators to become his experiments. Using his immortal body as well as his holy sword, the problem was that his eternal body will not only do with the demons going out of control, his disciple and also the 3 kings of monsters will also be affected, so his best option was to use the immortal sword's aura to attract cultivators and also monsters. In the end he will just have to wait for his meal of domain points come to him on their own, and as he was very excited to develop his territory, he ended up acting strange, and seeing that, the monster kings became worried. Those with his mental state, since he spent several hours acting like a freak. At first they tried to convince themselves that this was a new cultivation method, but after 4 hours, they ended up falling asleep. But suddenly they were woken up by their master screaming, and the reason he got angry was that he spent the whole night trying to attract the monsters with his holy sword, and in the end not a single demon appeared. In that time that they spent napping, the young woman Miss ended up drooling on the fox's sugdekai, and that made the Invincible King more irritated, since he wanted to be in his disciple's place. And while trying to understand why his plan didn't work, the Dimples from Paraguay said he knew who was making his plan go wrong, and explaining this, he said that since there are 3 monster kings in the temple and their auras are very strong, the demons chose to avoid approaching the temple. Naturally his subordinates started bragging about their auras. And instead of the Proto thanking them for the great work, the Invincible King got angry and used his power to make the cultivation levels of his monster subordinates return to the chi refinement stage. Naturally, they fell into depression after losing all his powers, and this scene made Paraguay's Dimples more afraid of him. And as every problem that could hinder his plan was solved, the Proto was excited. But because he was acting in a bizarre way, the immortal sword tried to flee from him. But in the end she ended up being sealed in the tree, and had to let all of her holy aura leak out as per his order. At the same time the monsters felt the aura of the holy sword, and were excited to lay their hand on the power of an immortal. Even the demons of the underworld felt the aura of the holy sword, and they all went after the treasure. And even though the Prota had the same vision he had when the Eternal Sect was destroyed, he wasn't scared, since he was completely different from before. So using the power of his invincible territory, he caused the sky full of demons to turn to ashes, and this terrifying scene made the Dimples of Paraguay decide to serve the Invincible King for his entire life. Even his subordinates were shocked by this scene. After killing all the demons, he only gained 3,400 points. The 3.0 version of the system needs 5,000 points to upgrade, so the point value he had was not enough, and the reason he got so little points even though he killed several demons, was that most of those attracted by the Holy Sword were low-ranking demons, and using that information, he created a new plan, and gave a mission to his disciples to reveal the news that the immortal weapon was in the temple, and the more overpowered demons know, the better it will be for him. And when asking his subordinates who was more familiar with this state, they began to fight among themselves to see who knew more, and in that the Prota gave the mission to spread the news from the treasure to the bull and the fox, and sent the serpent to the cloud state to find out which guild previously destroyed the Eternal Sect, and also to find out the whereabouts of the head of the Eternal Guild. And ending from and explaining their mission, the Prota handed a pill to each of them, and said that when they complete the mission, they will be rewarded. So a week after their departure, it shows the Patriarch of the Nine Swords sect, along with the Supreme Elder heading towards the Invincible King's territory. They couldn't believe that that girl had laid her hands on the immortal treasure. But if this rumor is true, they can't let the Holy Sword have any connection with their Nine Swords sect, otherwise the immortals will make their guild disappear from the map. In short, the Prota's disciple is part of the Nine Swords sect. Because of that, they decided get her back to his sect as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the Prota was at the utmost tranquility as he waited for his domain points. So when he saw the arrival of yet another nascent soul realm cultivator, he naturally got excited. The Dimples from Paraguay recognized the two old men, since they were part of the enemy sect of his guild, and since he didn't want the two old men to meet him. In a state so pitiful, he hid without thinking twice, and when the Prot was preparing to gain more mastery points, he heard his disciple calling one of the old men father, and the other grandfather, and instead of being happy to meet his father-in-law, he was frustrated that he couldn't earn domain points by killing these cultivators. Upon seeing his daughter, the middle-aged man told her to return home with them, but to the sadness of the father-in-law, his daughter had already fallen for the Prota's charm, and chose to leave her family to live with a man she had just married. Naturally, like any father in his situation, the old man got pissed at the Prota, and asked if his daughter wanted to stand by this loser, and let his entire sect be destroyed, and seeing the disrespectful way her father was treating her master, she fell into despair, as the Prota could kill her father easily. But ignoring her daughter's warning, the old man continued to disrespect the Invincible King. And the moment he went to attack the young man in front of him, he felt two terrifying auras behind him, and when looking to see what it was, the old man saw two kings of monsters in nascent soul cultivation, and with their arrival, he came to the conclusion that these monsters came after the immortal treasure, and as the level of cultivation of them were bigger than his, he knew that if they fought, he wouldn't survive, so to get his daughter out of this dangerous place as soon as possible, he decided to be friendly with them, and said that he wasn't after the treasure, he just came to take his daughter from back home. And in the midst of this tense atmosphere, a surreal scene happened in front of him. His daughter introduced them to the monsters, and the demons treated her respectfully. Not only that, The monster kings also called that young man master, so in this kind of situation, the only conclusion that the girl's father came to was that he was dreaming, unlike him. The old man accepted reality, and came to the conclusion that this young man in front of him was a god of transformation disguised as a mortal, and while they were shocked, the Invincible King was creating a plan in his head to unite the Nine Swords sect in his territory. At the same time, the elder greeted the Prota, and apologized for his son acting rudely. The reason he acted like that was because he was desperate to protect his daughter. Upon hearing this, the Prota said that it was fine, as he was family. Naturally, the girl's father got angry, and said that he did not give any consent for him to enter his family, and I stopped his son. The elder said that today they came to take his granddaughter back, and it was for her own good, so he hopes that His Excellency understands this, and does not stop their departure. But contrary to their will, the girl does not want it to go back home. She wanted to follow her master all her life, and hearing both sides, the Prota said that since they are his disciples' relatives, he naturally won't force her to stay if she wants to go back with them. But if she doesn't want to go, they won't be able to take her by force. And hearing her answer, the elder said that even though he has great power, he can't compete with immortals, so instead of letting such a young girl die in this place, it would be better for them to take her back home, as the Ghost Bone sect will soon lead her disciples to recover the immortal treasure, and since they have the help of the immortals, there's no way the Nine Swords sect, nor the young man can win. Of course, the only individual who was happy with this news was Dimples from Paraguay. But upon hearing these two old men talk a lot of shit about him and his sect, Dimples from Paraguay panicked and tried to convince the Invincible King that he was a changed person. Now he's his servant in life and his dog in death, so there's no way he could covet the elder's things, much less want that immortal treasure. His only aspiration in life is to be able to stand by the elder's side. Yet clear when the old ones recognized that this soul in front of them was the patriarch of the Ghostbone sect, they were shocked, and started to believe that this youth would be able to stand up to the immortals. As the patriarch of ghosts was fawning over the youth, but still, the elder was in doubt if he trusted his granddaughter to this mysterious master, and realizing that they still had doubts about him, the Invincible King decided to show a little of his power. So at the moment he ordered the fox to bring the guests to him. Several monsters appeared, and asked the fox if that was the place she had said was the immortal treasure, and she replied in a mocking way that it was. She and her master were waiting for them. And upon realizing that all these demons were monsters of the nascent soul, the elders were even more shocked, as this was the first time they had seen 10 monster kings united. But unlike them who was scared to death, the girl was excited and confident in her master's victory, and explained to her family that her master was so strong that he even gave her the immortal sword. Of course, seeing such a treasure in her hand, the two old men almost had a heart attack, and told her to hide it before the monster kings see. But to further increase their despair, the demons noticed the holy sword in her hand, and prepared to eliminate it, and take the sword, and to make things more fun, they decided to eliminate all the humans that were in the temple. Of course, the Prota wasn't worried at all, since he was in his invincible territory, so to show that he was confident in his victory, he started doing the poses from the anime JoJo's Bizarre, and seeing that both the monsters and the old people had the same reaction as a person seeing JoJo's Bizarre stylish poses for the first time, even the disciple of the Prota had to explain that her master is not usually like that, because if she didn't explain, her family would end up losing the little confidence she had in him. And unlike all of them, the fox mind understood the beauty behind these stylish poses, and in the midst of this mess of reactions, the Invincible King put his hand to his forehead. At the same time, all the monsters exploded out of nowhere, and with their death, the Prota accumulated more than 15,000 points, and using those points he upgraded his system to version 3.0. Of course, needless to say, the old people were even more shocked, seeing him casually kill 10 monster kings in seconds. They just didn't die of a heart attack because they were cultivators, and because of their strength. The old people started to think that the invincible king was an immortal who was able to use the power of laws with ease. The elder even began to feel jealous of his granddaughter for having found such a strong master. Of course, when noticing the look of admiration they were giving him, the prota's narcissism increased even more, and because he had upgraded the invincible domain, he gained a new skill, the true interpretation of the immortal path. At the same time, a delicious smell started to come out of his body, which made everyone around him start drooling, and the reason this was happening was that the ban on the eternal body sealed in his body had completely disappeared. Because of that, everyone around him lost control, and attacked him, but using their power. He put them to sleep, and while he was at a loss for what to do about his eternal body, the system window appeared explaining about his new skill. The true interpretation of the immortal path can be used to cover the host's body with the immortal aura, not only to hide his appearance, but also to hide his eternal body's aura. And using this new skill of his, he was able to seal his immortal body's scent. Of course, this new skill could do more things than this effect cheap to hide the aura. But he will need to develop his skill better to be able to use its power at the maximum. And for having updated the system to version 3.0, he received a gift package, and when he opened the package, he got the mirror and moon function, and also the Eternal Immortal Path card. But this experience card can only be used once, and using this he could turn an ordinary object into a true immortal weapon. The system also explains that when his invincible territory expands in the future, he will develop new ways to play. Naturally, the Proto was excited by this information, and used 5,000 points to acquire the Immortal Eternal Path function. With this skill his domain will transform in an immortal land, so as long as he lives and cultivates within the invincible domain in the future, mortal births may turn into immortal impulses, and his cultivation will grow by leaps and bounds. And as a result his territory has turned into a immortal land, the Shao Ban, the small spiritual